Okay, we start the new chapter for our last 3 weeks. So this video will be uploaded on our 13th week content, and we're gonna finish this chapter in maybe week 14, maybe, and week 15 will be uploaded later after our final exam. It's just my anticipation, so it could be changed, but my plan is so. So our final exam will be conducted offline. So you must come to the school. You must come to enter the economics and the business building. And you should pass the just simple test for your fever. So if your fever rate is under 37.5 Celsius degrees, so you're gonna be passed to enter the building, so you can take the exam. And if you are not allowed to pass the simple test, then you will be moved to a special room, which is serviced for that type of people. Those fever is over 37.5 Celsius degree. If we are low, then you can get a small sticker like this. Did you see that? This red one. So today I was checked by the officer, agent, and fortunately my fever was under 37.5 Celsius degrees. So I was allowed to enter the building and I got this sticker. So if you put this sticker on any part of your body, then the school officer or professors will be notified that you are a safe person. But as you already know that there are so many people who do not show any symptom but still positive for the coronavirus 19. So the only thing we can do to prevent any possible contagion is just protect ourselves, right? So you should bring your own mask for sure, and if you want to be more safer, then you should definitely bring the gloves, just simple gloves for just one-time use or the simple cheap one. And you should also bring your own tissue or any other alcohol things to make a self small part of cleaning around your desk and chair. And you should arrive before 30 minutes of your exam date and time. So today is the first day of our final exam period from today to the June 18th. So these 10 days period is really special day for the university. So school is now under some really, really serious and nervous situation right now. So I saw some students not wearing mask but still walking around the university. It is highly dangerous behavior, not only for that student but also for the other community members of our university. So you shouldn't hate any person, but it is not recommended. Okay, so please bring and wear the mask. And I think buying the public mask is pretty much easier right now. So you can buy 3 masks per week. I'm pretty sure about that on any pharmacy around your house or around the school. So, and it is pretty much cheap, right? Maybe 2001 or maybe something like that. So it's not so big burden for you, but it is huge benefit for your health. So please wear your gloves and bring it to take your final exam. And specifically more about our final exam, about the microeconomic theory. you're not allowed to open any textbook or any note or something, so you will just bring your pen or pencil or maybe eraser, and you're not allowed to use your cell phone as a calculator. So using calculator is not allowed. So in any calculation, you should do that by yourself, by your hand. But I'm pretty sure that if you are a student at the Chungnam National University, then you can definitely do that type of calculation, that level of calculation I want from my exam. It is super easy, so I don't think you really need calculator. If you cannot calculate that simple calculation, then I think your life is in serious situation. So you need to think about your life from the bottom of that part. So it means the calculation problem, you definitely have some calculation problems, but the technical part of the calculation should be easy relative to some other exams. Okay, and you will also bring the computer pen to mark your OMR sheet. So I think you have two types of pen for our exam. The one is to scribbling on the exam paper, and the another one which is specially designed for checking the OMR sheet. I think everyone knows about it, right? The pen for computer exam, something like that, to mark up your OMR sheet. And I believe the ball pen, the black colored ball pen works, but blue ball pen does not work. Red colored ball pen does not work. Pencil does not work. Okay, so you should bring black colored ball pen or black colored the computer usage, specially designed for computer usage sign pen. You should definitely bring that one, and you should definitely also bring the white eraser. If you got some mistakes on the checking the OMR sheet, you cannot you cannot borrow that white eraser from the other classmates during the exam. You cannot talk to the others during taking the exam, so you should definitely bring for yourself. So there are lots of things to be prepared for your final exam, but this is not my idea. This is the idea of the school headquarters. They decided to take a risk for the better type of exam in their perspective. They believed the offline exam is the better way than the online exam to evaluate the students with the better standards and the better circumstance because of the cheating problem, right? Did you see the news? Some college students from some pretty good university in South Korea, right? They cheated during the online exam, but they were caught. I think they are very stupid. How could they be caught by the school officer or the professors? I think they are very stupid guys. But anyway, they cheated, so they will be punished, and that punishment will be recorded on your transcript forever. Because your transcript, your college, the undergraduate transcript, will follow you until you die. I'm pretty sure about that. Every time you apply for your job until you are 65 years old, you will definitely have to submit your transcript for your undergraduate, college or university, and that cheating record will be there forever. So if I were to evaluate you as just one of the applicants for my own company, but I saw the record, then I will never throw you as my teammate or something. So never cheat, and cheating is really costly, not only for your college life but also for your life after college. So never thought about it, and you shouldn't do that. Okay, so if you have any other question, please let me know. I really don't want to go to school for the supervising you guys during the final exam date, because I have my own family, so I don't want to be a contagious person to my family members in any circumstance. I don't want to put myself on any risky circumstance or environment. And gathering together more than the 30 people inside really small packed area of the building is super risky, I think. So please protect yourself. I don't have any better idea to not to be contagious, right? So anyway, this chapter is all about the competitive market, and this is just basic, really basic fundamental type of market you will run until you graduate this department. The problem is that it is really basic and the fundamental structure, so it does not exist in the real world. I think there are very few examples for the competitive market or competitive firms in our real world, but in most of cases, it is really hard to find out any real example around our lives. But still, there is plenty of reason to study about this type of market, because it is really good starting point to learn what the types of market is defined and how a firms interacted with their customers in the specific form of the market, and why a types of markets are so important in determining the profits of a company or the market equilibrium price level of that type of market. So learning about the types of market is one of the beauty of the microeconomics, but unfortunately we have to stop in the middle of the study. But this is not the rare thing. So in many good university, the microeconomics coursework is divided by two parts. So microeconomics 1 and the microeconomics 2. So in the microeconomics 1, you will study the consumer choice theory and the firm production theory, like we did, and some parts of the market. Then one semester finishes, usually do that. And in the second part of microeconomics, so microeconomics 2 part, in the second semester, you finish the types of market, then you will learn about some specific issues in the perspective of microeconomics, such as information asymmetry, or the game theory, or the mechanism design things. That is really hot topic right now, trending right now in the microeconomic theory part. Then you will cover almost everything in the microeconomics, which means that some students maybe think about applying for really good companies or the government sectors, like the Bank of Korea or the Financial Supervisor Service or the higher ranked government office agent like 행정고시 or the 입법고시. I don't know how to pronounce it in the English. So yeah. So and that types of very good company definitely require any applicant to take the exam, and the exam is really difficult for most of guys. But if you take the microeconomics 1 and the microeconomics 2, then you're gonna be pretty much well prepared for that type of difficult exams. The unfortunate thing is that the College of Economics and Management, does not offer the microeconomics 2 usually. I found that after I arrived here. So I really want to change that conservative view of courseworking. So yeah, I am discussing with the other professors to offer the more difficult level of economics courses, such as microeconomics 2, the macroeconomics 2, and some monetary and the financial economics for students who really want to prepare for the difficult exam for pretty good company, and some international economics in detail, in deeper version of international economics things. Then now you can apply for Bank of Korea or maybe Korean Development Bank or Financial Deposit Insurance Corporations, 예금보험공사, something like that. That's my short-term or short-run dream. But anyway, so I must stop talking about some shitty things. So we can start with this chapter. So here are topics we need to discuss about it. So we firstly need to define the perfect competition, and after that you're gonna have some detailed version of insight how a single firm decides their profit maximization. So we will mathematically define the profit maximization condition, and we're going to apply that condition into several examples to be more familiar with that. And after that, we'll divide this type of competitions with the two parts, in the short term and in the long run, because the situation is pretty much different between the short run and the long run. So we firstly determine which level of price or which level of cost where a single firm shuts down its operation, which is called the shutdown price. And in the long run part, we'll also study about when or where a single firm exits the market. So, which is called the market exit price level. So we're gonna have three different level or three different situations in this chapter. The first one, the profit maximization point. Okay. The second one, the shutdown level. And the third one, the market exit level. So we study about these three parts, then you're gonna be pretty much good to go. Alright? So we firstly define the competition. Okay? Competition in microeconomic perspective is defined pretty much specifically. So a market is competitive if each firm in the market is price taker. Okay, so to carefully define the competition, we firstly should know about what the price taking means. The price taking means that you cannot affect the market price level. So the market price level is just given to you. If you enter the market, then the price information is something like a constant, not the controllable variable to you, because you are so tiny things. You are so small business operator. So any of your action doesn't affect the whole market, so the market price will never change by any of your actions, then you're gonna be called a price taker. Okay? So if you are a price taker, then a demand curve you see, not the market demand curve. You're gonna see the demand curve, which means that a demand for your product, demand for a single firm's production is horizontal, which means that a demand curve, what's the definition of demand curve from your principles of economics? A demand curve economically means the willingness to pay by a consumer, right? So it is something, some level of value that the consumer wants to pay. So if demand meets supply, then the market price will be created. So if you think about a demand only for your production as you a single small producer, then it is something like the price you can get from the consumer, right? But since you are the price taker, it is a constant, and a constant number is represented in the two-dimensional world as the horizontal line. So the demand curve for your production is represented in the horizontal line. Okay? Too easy for you? So there are several properties that define the price takers. But be careful, you can miss one or two properties, but you are still be able to be a price taker. So these are just properties of price taker, but it is not a sufficient conditions for the price taker. If a market has too many buyers and sellers, imagine that you are one of the producer or one of the seller in a chicken market, and in this chicken market there are a million producer. Okay, so a million sellers are in the single market and you are just one of them. So you decide to change your price level. Then what happening to the market price level? Nothing happened, right? Because you are just one of the million sellers. So the price changes of your production doesn't affect on the total, the overall, the market price level. So if there are many buyers and many sellers, then the price level could not be changed easily. And also, if you produce the same quality of chicken with your neighbor or with your competitors, then you also have no power to control for the overall price level. If you have a little bit different quality of your production, then there will be some specific number of consumers who love your production. So things gonna be pretty much changing. So even if there are many buyers and many sellers, a single firm has slightly differentiated goods or services, then the market is not a perfect competitive market anymore, which will be called the monopolistically competitive market, so which will be studied in the later part of this market part. But if we assume that there are just identical qualities of production by any sellers, by any producers, then it is more like the perfect competitive market. Third, all the information given to any buyers or sellers are the same. So there is no information asymmetry. There is no information friction problem. So if you have the full information about the market and about the price level and about any behavior things of buyers and sellers, then you're gonna be just free to move around the market. So nothing can block you from getting there or coming here or something. So the full information is another condition for the perfect competitive market or the price taking sellers. And the transaction cost should be also negligible. For instance, do you like the 평양냉면? It is one of type of Korean noodle, which is originated from the North Korean part, for sure. I believe that. So I love the 평양냉면, and I love several good 평양냉면 restaurants in Seoul because I lived in Seoul for more than 25 years. So I'm pretty much familiar with the map of Seoul. So I know several good places for really good 평양냉면. And now I'm living in Daejeon, but sometimes I really want to eat that specific 평양냉면 in Seoul, but I cannot go there right after this class because I have to buy a ticket for train, and it takes more than an hour. And after arriving in the station, I also have to take the subway to get there. So it'll take about 2 hours to get one 평양냉면. Too high transaction cost, so I cannot get there. So the 평양냉면 places in Seoul is not perfect competitive anymore to me right now. Okay. And the last condition or the last property is pretty much simple to understand. Any firms can easily enter or exit the market. So it is called the free exit or free enter condition for the perfect competitive market. So these are pretty much good, not good, but these are the properties that can be easily understood by any student, right? So how to be derived a single firm's demand function? To derive a single firm's demand function, we will use a term which is called the residual demand curve. So residual demand curve is defined by the market demand curve. Market demand curve that is not met by other sellers at any given price level, like equation number 1. So residual demand curve is represented by the dr of P. So the P is controllable independent variable, and this residual demand curve is the unit of this residual demand curve is the quantity, right? Because in this two-dimensional world, one part is price level, one part is price level, and the other part is the quantity. Okay. So the quantity of residual demand will be defined by the original market demand, the DOP, negative a supply of others, so which is represented by the SO. Okay, the supply quantity of supply by others. This is the residual demand curve, and graphically like that. So we can start with the price level $63. At the level of $63, let us look at the right hand side of the graph. On the right hand side of the graph, it is the situation of the market, and the left figure shows us the situation of a single firm. Okay, so to derive the residual demand curve, we want to firstly look at the market situation. So in the market, at the level of $63 per the metal chair, it is in the equilibrium, right? At the price level $63, the market equilibrium quantity is 500, right? But if this single firm is removed from that supply, And we know that on the right side of the graph, this firm produces 93 units of the chair. Okay, so if this firm is negative from the market supply of 500, then the price level is going down, and the difference between the market supply at the $63 with this firm and without this firm is 93, right? So in the a little bit lower price level, $63, the market demand is 527, right? But without this firm, the supply of all other firms without this firm is 434, right? Because our information give us that at the level of $63, this single firm can supply the chair about the 93. Okay, so there is a gap at the $63 between 527 and the 434. Okay, so in this gap is the amount of this single firm can supply in the market at the level of $63. So the price level is really small changes by $3, but a demand is hugely changing, right? So a demand curve for this single firm on the left side of the figure is pretty much flat, right? So from our previous chapters, we knew that flatter demand curve is more elastic, right? So we can say that from the deriving residual demand curve, a demand curve for a single firm could be really elastic. It is almost flat. So we can say that a single firm in a competitive market is a price taker, because in price taking market, the demand curve for a single firm is flat because they are price taking. Okay. In more mathematically, we can show that the elasticity of a demand for the single firm, which is represented by the epsilon I in the equation number 2, is defined by a number of firms in the market, which is defined by n, times the market elasticity of demand, the epsilon, negative the supply curve without this firm, so n negative 1, because this firm should be accepted, should be deleted from the supply of all the other firms. So n negative 1 times the elasticity of supply of the other firms. Okay, so the difference between those two is the demand elasticity for that single firm, the epsilon of I, like equation number 2. So let's have good example. So in our example, the Korean metal chair manufacturing market has 78 firms in the market. So I'm not sure the number of 78 is enough big to be defined as the competitive market, but in our example, we assume that the estimated elasticity of supply is 3.1, pretty much reasonable because it is just around 0. And the estimated elasticity of demand is negative 1.1. So the important thing is that the elasticity of supply is usually positive number, and the elasticity of demand in the market is usually negative number. So let's back to equation number 2. The elasticity of demand for that single firm, epsilon I, could be a negative number, right? And in front of elasticity of supply on the second term in the equation number 2 on the right hand side, there is a negative here. So negative minus negative, negative plus negative, right? So if we assume that the first property of the price taking, the many buyers means that we can send n into the infinite number. So if the n and m negative 1 go to the infinity, then elasticity of demand for this single firm could be pretty much large, right? So that's our expectation. That guarantees us the flat version of demand curve for that single firm. So our calculation result is pretty much straightforward. You can put the numbers given in the previous page. So 78 times negative 1.1 minus 77, because we have to take 1 away from the all numbers of firms in the market. 77 times 3.1 is definitely a negative number and is pretty much big negative number. Negative 324.5, which is definitely larger than the market elasticity of demand, negative 1.1. So our conclusion is pretty much obvious. If a single firm is operating in the competitive market, then the demand elasticity faced by that single firm should be pretty much larger than the market elasticity of demand. So a single firm will face flatter version of demand, which means that this single firm is the price taker. Okay. So in the beginning of this lecture, I told you it is really hard to find out the real example of the competitive market, but still there is a reason to study about it because it is really good starting point. And from these basic stuffs, you can enlarge your understanding about the various types of different markets. And even some markets could be depicted as pretty much good example for the competitive market. They are not actually competitive market because there are many problems that breaks one or more properties of the price takers in the previous pages. Like, so for instance, the stock market, the stock exchange market, many economists exemplify that stock exchange market as one of the competitive market. But if you are working or if you are active in the market, then you will easily know that information is not fully given to you, and there is some transaction cost. And they order sellers in the stock exchange market, they don't sell identical productions, right? So many properties of the price takers can be broke down in the stock exchange market. So it is pretty much hard to say that the stock exchange market is good example of the perfect competition. But we can still discover some clue or some footsteps of competitive market in the stock exchange market or the other markets, like some rice market maybe, or some pig market, some cow market. Because cow market or pig market, the production qualities are almost identical, and there are so many pigs or cows sold in the same day in one market, so many buyers and sellers. And if you don't want to sell your cows or pigs, then you can get out of there easily. So there is no barriers to the free exit or entry condition. And also there is really small level of the transaction cost. So maybe there are some or a few examples for the perfect competition. And the more important reason to study about the perfect competition is that it is the basic stuff, it is starting point, so it is also very desirable properties, which can be the benchmark to the other markets, which means that the perfect competition is something like the ideal type of market, because we know the perfect competition has the lowest level of the distortion. In the monopoly market or in the oligopoly market or in the monopolistically competitive market, they all have some restrictions. They all have some distortions. They have some social welfare decrease. They have some bad parts in their structure, in their properties. But the perfectly competitive market or the perfect competition is almost perfect to all the sellers and the buyers. So it is something like the heaven in the market. So that's, ironically, that's the reason why we are unable to find out the real example in our real world easily. Okay? So let's turn into the profit part in the perfect competition. The economic profit is defined like equation number 3. And this definition does not change across the types of market, which means that this economic profit definition can work in the monopoly or in the oligopoly or in all the other types of markets. Economic profit is defined by the revenue negative the cost. In this case, the profit is the total cost and the revenue is the total revenue. And the cost is, of course, the total cost, right? So this is definition. So we can have a lot of variation from the equation number 3 right now. If the profit is negative, which means that the cost is rather than the revenue, then we can say that this firm makes a loss. And the economic cost, including the opportunity cost, includes both the explicit and implicit costs, which is a little bit conceptual thing, so you don't have to memorize these things. I hate the memorizing questions, so don't worry about it for your final exam. So profit, the unit of profit or the unit of revenue or the unit of cost is a dollar term. It is a monetary term. So in our two-dimensional world, the controllable or the endogenous variable should be the quantity, right? So now we can control for the quantity to have some price level as a dependent variable, right? So every firm's goal is maximizing their profit. So in order to maximize the profit, a single firm should think about the two things. First one is that what is the level of output where its profit is maximized? And the second one, which is a little bit more complicated, when and where a firm should shut down its operation and produce the zero output. Okay, so the first question and the second question are totally different. The maximizing point does not guarantee you are getting the best outcome out of your operation. The shutdown decision does not guarantee you are losing something, right? So the profit maximizing output level doesn't have to equal to you're gonna shut down your operation. So they are totally different questions. But these two questions are strongly related to your profit maximization question. And the profit maximization is all about the business. And to know about this profit maximization point, then you should know about the structure of the cost. So that's a reason why we studied the cost in the previous chapter. Okay, so there are 3 rules to maximize your profit. And all these 3 rules are the identical, which means that if you satisfy, for instance, output rule 1, then output rule 2 and 3 will be automatically satisfied as well. So all the 3 things are talking about the same thing. The first rule, the firm sets its output where its profit is maximized. So that's just definition of profit maximization. And output rule number 2, a firm sets its output where its marginal profit is 0. So getting a little bit difficult for some students. And output rule number 3, a firm sets its output where its marginal revenue equals its marginal cost, like equation number 5. So in graphics, I think the graph is easier way to understand. In graph, it's like that. So your marginal profit is maximized at the quantity Q star in this graph, right? Because at the Q star, your profit is at the highest level. This yellow line is your profit line or profit curve. So at Q star, your profit is maximized. So the Q star is the output level you want. Output level, you are maximizing your profit. So that is output rule number 1. And at that point, the Q star, mathematically, the slope of this curve at the Q star is 0, right? So it is output rule number 2. The marginal profit is the slope of this profit curve, so which is going to 0 where your profit is maximized. Output rule number 3 comes from equation number 4. If you take derivative equation number 4 with respect to a Q, the quantity, and set the result equals to 0 by output rule number 2, then your reference side is going to 0 after taking derivatives. And the right side will be changed to marginal revenue negative the marginal cost. Okay, so marginal revenue negative marginal cost equals to 0 after taking derivatives, which is equation number 5, right? So marginal revenue equals to marginal cost at the Q star, if and only if at the Q star. And this point, the slope of profit or result after taking derivatives of equation number 4 is 0. And at this point, and only in this part, only at this point, your profit is maximized. Okay, so output rule 1, 2, and 3 are all the same story. So by definition, marginal revenue, or the MR in short term, is defined by the change in the revenue a firm gets from selling one more unit of output. So it is the result of taking derivatives of your total revenue with respect to the quantity. Okay, the marginal profit is also the result of taking derivatives of your total profit with respect to the quantity from equation number 4. So the marginal profit equals to the marginal revenue negative the marginal cost, because the definition of the profit is the linear. So taking derivatives, this linear equation, you can take derivatives separately, the three terms. So equation number 6 is just come from equation number 4, the definition of the profit. And this is the graphical representation about our 3 output rules to find out the point of the maximizing profit. So this is the profit maximization point. And now we are turning into the shutdown rule. Shutdown is a little bit more complicated because it's a story only in the short term. So let us see this example. This firm shuts down only if it can reduce its loss by doing so. So this is the shutting down condition. If a single firm can reduce its loss by shutting down, then it is better to shut down. So how about this example? This firm's revenue is $2,000 and the variable cost is $1,000 and the fixed cost is $3,000. So the total cost is the $4,000, but the revenue at this point is $2,000. So this firm's profit is negative $2,000. So you may think this firm is making a loss, so it's better to shut down. But if this firm shuts down, the loss would be negative $3,000. It's fixed cost, right? Because this fixed cost is totally gone if this firm shuts down right now, because there is no more revenue coming into this firm. So this fixed cost will be just gone. It cannot be recovered. So $3,000 of loss is definitely worse than the $2,000 of loss, which is this firm the current loss in operating. So this firm is better off to operate more, even if this firm is making a loss. So making a loss is not sufficient condition for the decision of the shutdown. Okay, the shutdown could be decided only if it is the better choice to reduce its loss. Okay. Second condition, the firm shuts down only if its revenue is less than its avoidable cost. What's avoidable cost? A variable cost, right? So both versions of the shutdown rule, the rule 1 is making a loss a little bit smaller by doing so, then we can do that. The second one, revenue is smaller or equals to the avoidable cost. Only those two conditions are both satisfied, then we can decide, okay, so this is time for shutting down our business. So let us find out the more numerical condition for the shutdown. Because the competitive firm's marginal revenue equals to the market price level. Why? We are price taker. So the market price P is just the same across all the quantity we produce. So your marginal revenue is the same. So it will be just horizontal. But you still have some active marginal cost curve, or your cost structure is changing over your quantity level of output. So by using our output rule number 3, we can maximize our profit by equalizing marginal revenue with our marginal cost structure. And we know that our marginal revenue equals to the market price level P. So our marginal cost equals the market price level P, like equation number 8. Then we can maximize our profit. So equation number 8 is the sufficient condition for the profit maximization. In graph, on the upper graph, our marginal revenue equals to the market price level, like the blue line, and it is horizontal. We cannot affect market price level, so our marginal revenue is just given. It is the same across all the levels of our output quantity. But unfortunately, our marginal cost is increasing over the quantity of output, as we see in the previous chapter. So marginal cost equals our marginal revenue at the point of E, and we know that this point is where we can maximize our profit. So the quantity level, or the Q star, for the profit maximization is 284, like on the bottom graph. Our profit is maximized at the point of quantity, which equals to 284. Okay, how to calculate our total profit at the maximization point? Total profit is calculated by the quantity, our revenue negative cost. How to calculate it? You can divide by Q to both terms, the revenue and the cost. Okay, then the cost will be changed to the average cost, right? And the profit is going to your average revenue. The profit equals to revenue negative cost. Then you can divide these terms by the quantity. Then the right hand side of your equation number 5, the definition of the profit, you change it to the average revenue negative the average cost, right? Which means that this colored rectangular, right? So the color rectangular is your quantity is like this, the horizontal part from 0 to 284, and the vertical part is your average revenue negative average cost, 8 negative 6.5. So your total profit is calculated by 1.5 times 284. Okay, so this is the amount of profit where it is maximized, and in the maximization point, your marginal cost equals to the market price level or your marginal revenue. So the example problem: if a specific tax of T, so the amount of tax is defined by T, per ton of lime is collected from only one competitive firm. So this firm is really unfortunate to be punished by the government. And what could be changed for its cost production or cost structure? So by being punished by the government, these firms, the marginal cost and the average cost will be increasing vertically just by amount of T. So average cost is increased by T and the marginal cost is increased by T. So the both cost structure is going up from AC1 to AC2, from MC1 to MC2. So by the rule of the profit maximization decision making, new marginal cost curve will meet the same price, the same marginal revenue, which is not changed by this punishment, because any changes in this firm does not affect on the market price level, because this firm is just price taker. So our profit maximization point is moved from E1 to E2, So this firm produces less production because of they have to pay for some tax, and this more taxation have negative effect on the production cycles of this firm. So the quantity for the profit maximization is decreased from Q1 to Q2, but it does not mean this firm does not produce its quantity at the point where the profit is not maximized. This firm is still making its profit maximized, but the profit maximization point is affected by the taxation. And the total profit is also shrink from the rectangular B to the area of A by definition or by the calculation. Okay? So I think we can stop here a little bit. Then we can continue in the next video.